Hello and welcome to today's live. So we have a very interesting class for you today, how to build a strong microbiome. But before we get into that, I'm going to help you understand why you want to build a strong healthy microbiome. So I'm sure there's a good handful of you that already know you want a strong healthy microbiome, and great, we're going to get to that in a second. But for those of you that don't, if you have no idea why you want a healthy microbiome, I'm going to tell you. So your microbiome is basically your best insurance policy against almost anything bad that can happen to you. It's directly inversely correlated with essentially every disease. So the higher the diversity of your microbiome, the less likely you are to get any disease. Literally any and every single disease. So this is even mental health things like depression, anxiety, physical problems, so autoimmune issues, arthritis, Sjogren's syndrome, obviously digestive problems, Crohn's, colitis, IBS, different types of digestive illness, everything. It's literally directly correlated with everything. So all different types of disease and all-cause mortality. So this even includes things like heart disease, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, everything, absolutely everything. So if you have a stronger microbiome, you're going to be more resilient to all of these different problems. On top of that, it also helps to protect you against a lot of, it's the first layer of your immune system. So it's going to protect you against all different types of infectious disease. So this includes things like flu, colds, viruses, even things like food poisoning. So if you have a strong microbiome and you eat something that's not great for you, you might be okay if you have a strong microbiome. So it's so important. It's one of the most important things for you to focus on with regards to your health. So I am going to take your questions throughout this class, and I have you here. So let me know if you have any questions, and I will make sure that I answer them for you. So on with the class. How to build a strong microbiome. So I always like to say the first thing that you can do is, instead of putting in a lot of effort to try to improve the health of your microbiome, let's first of all just stop doing the things that are making your microbiome weak. So primarily we need to be avoiding a few things here. So on this side we've got medication. So this is something that you have to talk about with your doctor. I am not a doctor. This isn't medical advice, but I can tell you that most medications have an antibiotic effect, or they affect the microbiome in some way. So we've got PPIs, so these are proton pump inhibitors. These affect your body's ability to produce stomach acid. We've got antispasmodic medications, so these are things like buscopan. They affect the motility, especially in the small intestine. And antacids, so these are actually just very potent alkaline substances that neutralize your stomach acid. So talk with your doctor, obviously. You have to talk with your doctor about these things because these are medications. But these do have antibiotic effects, and obviously antibiotics. I mean, it's in the name, right? So overuse of antibiotics is one of the biggest reasons that we have such a problem with microbiome dysbiosis now. And I haven't written it here, but I am also going to put herbals. So if you're on some kind of like anti-parasitic, antiviral, antimicrobial herb regime, oregano oil, grapefruit seed extract, anything that's even a plant food, a herb that has been put to an extremely high dosage, is destroying the diversity of your microbiome. And I can understand there might be some people that say, well, what do we do about SIBO? What do we do about candida infections? My perspective on these things is vastly different, and the approach that I would use in these situations is to work on increasing the diversity of the microbiome. Because you only get SIBO and you only get candida and parasite infections if this healthy microbiome that keeps you protected in the first place is disrupted. So disrupting it more by taking more herbs, more antibiotics, and more things that are going to reduce the diversity of your gut even further doesn't make any sense to me. So that's not why I would go that way. So I'm going to put that on that list. On this side over here, we've got toxins. So primarily here we're looking at environmental toxins. So those we've got pesticides. So this is anything you eat that isn't organic is going to have pesticides on it. Even stuff that you eat that is organic has some pesticides on it. You cannot completely avoid it, but you can do your best. So avoid pesticides wherever you can. You will get more pesticides on certain things, so you want to be strategic. I understand eating everything organic or grass-fed or biodynamically grown is not affordable for everybody. So do what you can. Animals have their own natural detoxification mechanisms. Plants don't really. So it's more important to prioritize organic plant foods than animal foods. And of the animal foods, you want to be very careful about the fatty animal products. So things like butter, ghee, the animal fats that you get from these animals, because this is where they store basically all of these toxins. These are all fat soluble, they're all dissolved in fat. So we want to make sure that we're getting good quality animal products, especially the fats. So it's do what you can, avoid your exposure where possible. Underneath that we've got chlorine and fluoride. So biggest sources of these are your drinking water, and you can imagine if you're drinking from a tap, this is going straight into your gut and it's having an antibiotic effect, antimicrobial effect. Really disrupts the microbiome, kills your healthy biofilms, actually acts quite badly as an endocrine disruptor. It's not very healthy for you. So it affects thyroid function and does a lot of other bad stuff in your body. But primary focus here is the gut, and it will kill your microflora, so it will reduce the diversity. So make sure you're drinking good water. Here I put artificial. So this is anything artificial. Artificial colours, artificial flavours, artificial smells, artificial sweeteners, everything. Anything that isn't from nature is probably going to have an antibiotic nature because it's going to be toxic in some way. And the reason that toxins are really disruptive to the microbiome is your microbiome will sacrifice themselves to detoxify you. So they will reduce the diversity as they're dying out because they're trying to protect you. So reduce any exposure to anything artificial that you don't find in nature. Next we've got mold. So it's not actually mold themselves, but it's the mycotoxins that the mold produces. Mycotoxins are potently antibiotic, and kind of makes sense if you think about how we discovered antibiotics. You can remember the penicillin mold growing on top of the orange. So this was a mold that was growing and it produces antibiotics. The mycotoxins it produces are antibiotic in nature. So if you're being exposed to mycotoxins on a regular basis, it's like you're taking antibiotics with every single breath and with every time you swallow. So you're basically on constant antibiotics. And finally we've got chemicals. So here we've got two categories. We've got personal care products and we've got house cleaning chemicals. So things like bleach, detergents, things used to clean the floor. These are all chemicals, these are all antibiotic in nature. They're all going to disrupt your microbiome. And then we've got personal care products, so shampoos, things you put on your face, if you brush your teeth, like you've got fluoride in there, you've got other types of chemicals. These are all going to disrupt the composition of your microbiome. And finally, enzymes. I put this because I've got enzymes here and I've got enzymes down here as well. I've got them as an asterisk. So enzymes are present in all of the foods that we eat, and you can take them as a supplement, as like a digestive enzyme. And this is, I would encourage some people to do this, but you have to be careful when you're taking enzymes that should be produced by your microbiome. So this is a really good example of this is cellulase. We don't produce cellulase ourselves. This is a job that we allow our microbiome to do. So our gut flora produce cellulase to break down cellulose. If you're taking cellulase as a supplement, it's going to break down the cellulose in the food that you're eating before your microbiome get to interact with it. So they, in essence, they lose their food because you've already digested the cellulose for them. So they don't have anything to eat. And if they don't have anything to eat, then they don't have anywhere to live, right? So you have to be careful and strategic when you're taking long-term enzyme supplements. If you're going to take one long-term, I would use one that just contains enzymes that the body produces itself. So this would be, I like LipoGold by Enzymes. It's just lipase, protease, and alipase, which are enzymes that we produce ourselves. Just going to see if we have any questions. Morton says, hello. Hi Morton, lovely to have you. No questions yet. If you have questions, let me know. So, now we're moving down into the things that we want to include. And I've got a little key. So, for those of you who can't tell because I'm a terrible artist, this is a key. I'm a coach, right? Teacher, not an artist. So this is a key. The key to a strong, healthy microbiome is diversity. The more diverse organisms we have in the gut, so different bacteria, yeast, fungi, worms, protozoa, methanogens, archaea, viruses, all of these different organisms, the more of the different types of varieties that we have, the stronger the microbiome is. So the key to the strong microbiome is diversity, and the way that we perpetuate that diversity is through the diversity in the things that we're doing. So when you're looking at the food that you're eating, you want to make sure you've got lots of diverse colour, different diverse flavour, taste and aroma. So think about how, for example, coffee is this really dark, rich black colour, and it's got this very strong aroma, like you know what coffee smells like. Well, these are different types of polyphenolic compounds which have a very prebiotic effect. They help to increase the diversity of the microbiome. And then compare this to maybe like chocolate, cacao, it's got this really chocolatey flavour. And then compare that to the taste and smell of onions and garlic, and they've got this different whitish colour. And then compare that to blueberries, they've got this very dark purplish colour and this very specific taste. And you eat two different berries, one of them's a little bit sweeter, one of them's a little bit sour. They've got different compounds in even the different berries. And it's this variety of different things that provides different fuel sources for different organisms to thrive. So the diversity is the key. So it's not just diversity in the plant foods, different animal foods, even different foods regardless, just cooked in different ways. So go for cooked and then boiled and then fried and then roasted. You're going to have different levels of different things that help to promote different levels of diversity. So down here we've got fermented foods. Fermented foods, we also want diversity in these fermented foods. So you can try a yogurt and then a kefir and then a kimchi and then a natto and then a tempeh and then sauerkraut. Like the more diversity of these different prebiotic foods that you have, the different fermented foods that they have prebiotics incorporated in them because they're whole food supplements, they're going to have probiotics, they're going to have prebiotics, they're going to have postbiotics, and these are going to have vast implications on the diversity of your microbiome. So it's not just about having one type of fermented food, it's about having different types. And maybe if you make your own kefir, try doing it with one type of kefir grain, and then maybe buy some kefir from the supermarket. And then try one of your friends that live across town's kefir. They're going to have a completely different complex of different microbes. So it's all about the diversity there. And finally, we've got probiotics. So I know not everybody can use fermented foods, and I know not everybody can have access to diversity in their diet through food intolerances or allergies or other different types of things. And that's a way more personalised thing, kind of hard to talk about in a video. If you need help with that, just let me know, I'll give you a hand. But probiotics are pretty good because they give us a very standardised dosage. We know exactly what we're getting inside, and we know the different types of species and strains that we're getting. So if you have high levels of intolerance, we can use a probiotic to target specific organisms that seem low in gut tests or based on symptoms what seems like it's necessary. And we can also work on increasing the dosage in a more standardised way, so we can avoid the negative side effects of altering the composition of the microbiome too quickly. So it's like constipation, diarrhea, Herxheimer type symptoms, so cold, flu, just generally not feeling great, feeling quite miserable, and we can just like bypass all of that. So when we're eating these different types of diverse foods, we get different types of prebiotic fibres in them, but it isn't just the prebiotic fibres that are important. I know that there's a lot of people talking about how important getting like inulin and then fructooligosaccharides and different types of FODMAPs and how these are important, and they are, but it's not the end of everything. You get a lot of diversity through the polyphenolic compounds. So again, the different colours, the different flavours, the different tastes, the different aromas. So you should be experiencing lots of different types of foods. And down here again, we've got enzymes. So enzymes, as I said, we want to avoid enzymes that break down the food that we actually want to be using to feed the microbiome. But if you have lost some level of digestive capacity, so there's certain foods that you can't break down, digest and absorb, we can use enzymes to take a bit of work off the gut, so the gut can work on doing other things. And if you have a deficiency, so you're not able to produce enough of your enzymes yourself, taking enzymes, so the ones that I like, Microbiome by Enzymatica, because they have amylase, protease, and lipase, and that's it. It doesn't have any fillers or any other stuff. It doesn't have like maltase or hemicellulase, cellulase, or any of the other types of enzymes that should be functioning elsewhere in the gut, especially in concert with the microbiome. We can help to support the microbiome in a few different ways. So these enzymes can modulate the growth and the breakdown of different organisms. They can strip biofilms. They can do a lot of different things. So if you're missing enough of the enzymes that you would physiologically produce yourself, taking those as a supplement can also help with microbiome diversity. And finally, we've got less refined equals better. So this is just a general rule for your diet. The less refined it is, the better it's going to be. So instead of maybe say like white bread, if we went with a wholemeal sourdough or something that has more flavour to it, like white bread just kind of tastes a bit like cardboard. Whereas I had sourdough for the first time quite recently, and it's like really sour, it's got a lot of flavour to it. You can feel there's a lot more going on, there's more texture, and this just means you've got a lot of different things, a lot more different components that are going to affect the gut microbiome. So, just check one more time for questions. Okay, so Joanne Brimmer says, do you think MCT oil can have an antibiotic effect? Yes, it definitely can. So, MCT oil is primarily derived of it's sort of like 50% of coconut oil. So you've got caprylic, caproic, and capric acid are the three primary constituents of coconut oil, other than the lauric acid, which technically, there's debate whether it's an MCT or whether it's an LCT. I think it's being considered more of an MCT now, but for the sake of the argument, we'll just stick with the three that are definitely MCTs. These have potent antimicrobial effects. They're in particular very antifungal, and I think they can actually be, this is the appropriate way to take an antimicrobial. So this isn't really refined. This is, the best way to do this in my experience would be to just use coconut oil. If you don't have a coconut sensitivity and you're okay with salicylates, just use coconut oil, because it's way closer to being a whole food. It's way less refined, especially if it's cold pressed, virgin, organic. It's going to be really helpful for the microbiome. There's also, as I said, the other half of it is lauric acid, which in the digestive process is going to get converted into monolauric, which is one of the primary components of breast milk. And you can imagine how important breast milk is to helping to build a child's microbiome up. So if we can get that component in there alongside the MCTs, we're getting this really cool immune stimulating, microbiome developing, whole food effect. So I would go with coconut oil over MCT oil, but yes, it definitely can work as an antimicrobial, but that's the way that I would do it, because you're not using it specifically as an antimicrobial, you're using it more as a food, which is the way that I think these things are supposed to work. Okay, we got one more question from Dom. If you're watching and you have a question, I'm going to answer Dom's question and then I'm finishing up. So make sure you leave your question now so I can answer it. Dom says, can you discuss postbiotics, please? So, really interesting question. Postbiotics are, in essence, substances that are produced by bacteria that we then take after they've been produced by bacteria. So actually, as we were talking about enzymes, a lot of enzymes are actually postbiotics because they're enzymes that are derived through microbial growth. So I know that the enzymes that are in Lipogol are actually created through a process where they allow microbes to produce the enzymes. So in essence, these digestive enzymes are actually a postbiotic. Some examples of other postbiotics would be things like butyrate supplements. So butyrate is a short-chain fatty acid that's produced when our microflora eat certain types of prebiotic fibres and they produce this short-chain fatty acid. This is actually the primary fatty acid that cows make inside their guts when they eat grass. So it's kind of funny, a kind of funny point that I learned is cows actually eat a ketogenic diet because even though all they're basically eating is fibrous material that seems to be very low in fat, the way their digestive system works is basically all of the food that they eat is fermented into fat in their gut through their bacteria. So this fat that's produced is primarily butyrate, and this is a really good example of a postbiotic. This butyrate works nicely as a supplement because it's what the cells in the digestive system, especially in the colon, especially towards the end of the colon, prefer to use as a fuel source. So if we take it as a supplement, we can help to provide the cells in the digestive system with their preferred fuel source. However, as this is a postbiotic, this is something that our microbiome should be doing for us already. So it can work if the gut isn't doing it, but taking it long term isn't the solution. The solution is, why is my gut not producing enough butyrate? How can I put the organisms back in there that should produce the butyrate and then feed them the right food so they can make butyrate for them? That way it's cheaper and that way it's easy, you know, because healing is supposed to be really easy. And your body already has the tools to do this, we just have to help it do that. So, that is it. No more questions. So that is it for today's live. I hope you found this really helpful. Hope you found this really interesting. If you're watching this after the live and you have questions, please let me know. Let me know how you like the setup. I know maybe the audio isn't perfect just yet. It might still be a little bit echoey. We're still working on getting the room filled with furniture. But yeah, this was the first live that we've done on a whiteboard. Let me know if you like the setup. Let me know if you like the topic. Let me know if you found it interesting and helpful. And if you're going to implement anything that you learned today. So that's everything from me. And have you have a go? Ciao.